Carrie Van Ice here at Barefoot Consultants, and welcome to another one of our little mini training videos that I do for the first newsletter of the month. And this week I'm not so much doing a training as a things I wish I would have known before I started teaching. And I have my own things I wish I would have known before I started teaching. But I went out on the internet and I looked it around. I read a bunch of articles of things that other people had said they wish they would have known before they started teaching, either tutoring individually, teaching English as a foreign language or a second language, or any of the above. And I came up with a list of 7 things that people said they wish they would have known ahead of time. And I just thought we would unpack these a little bit, because I think there's some really good advice in here for you, no matter how you are going to go about teaching English. So the first one was, not every class needs to be a 100. And this, for sure, I can relate to. I didn't always have the best classes. Some days I went home and I felt like, that was garbage, Carrie. You can do better, but on the whole, I think I'm a pretty good teacher. I know that my students enjoyed learning from me, and we're not on every day. And so we don't have to beat ourselves up so much on the days when we're just a little bit off, or the kids are, especially if you're teaching kids like I was, the students are a little bit off. It's okay. It's all going to even out in the end. And what you're looking for is a good overall experience, right? So the next one, which I thought was really interesting and is good advice, it's something I never really thought about before when I was teaching in the classroom, but this teacher said, the students don't have to get it right away. And I thought, yeah, right. Why do we think we're failing as teachers if the students aren't getting it right away? It's cumulative. If you're going to be working with a classroom of students over an academic year, or with an individual online student for several months, what you really need to be looking at and rating yourself on, if you want to look at it that way, is the cumulative effects. How far they come over time, not whether or not they're getting it right away. Because you and I both know we've all learned something new before, and we didn't always get it right out of the gate. Sometimes it took several exposures to a concept or an idea for us to really let it sink in and be able to start utilizing it in our lives. And this is especially important when it comes to languages, for those of you like me who've learned another language before. So the third one kind of goes hand in hand with this maybe, and it's rushing is always counterproductive. And I think this is probably something that those of you who are working off of a curriculum will find the temptation to rush so that you can stay on track with the curriculum outline, whether it's a yearly outline or a certain amount of, maybe you're teaching at a language institute and you have the students for 6 months. And so oftentimes we want to rush through things so that we can stay on schedule. So the students don't have to get it right away, of course, but it's not about getting everything done. It is about the students getting it at some point. So if you need to slow down sometimes and bring in extra materials for the students beyond the curriculum materials so that they really do get it, it's better to do that, because especially when it comes to language learning, you are building a foundation every single day for what you're going to be teaching the next day, the next week, the next month, the next year. And if they don't have that solid foundation of understanding, there's going to be diminishing returns over time. So another thing that I know I talk about a lot, so it won't come as any surprise to you, is that students learn when they're having fun. So I'm always talking about how if you are an online tutor or you're submitting a CV to someone, make sure that you mention you get it, that students are more engaged and they actually learn more when they're enjoying the process. So keep that in mind. Just opening up a workbook or a textbook and filling in the blank exercises, it's not engaging enough. We all know that when we remember experiences and things that we learned in life because of the atmosphere around us at the time. So you get to create that atmosphere. The next one is starting class with a win is always a good idea. And of course we all know that, but how many of us really set the intention that before we start our lesson, or the first thing we do when we start our lesson is we make sure that our student gets a quick win so that they're more motivated to stay engaged throughout the lesson. So what can you do to ensure that your student gets a quick win? Well, it's probably going to depend on the student, the way that you're teaching, whether or not you have a classroom full of students. But keep this in mind. How can, with each interaction that I have with my students, can I make sure that at the very beginning of our time together, they get a quick win? They are much more invested in what comes next if they start off with a win, just like all of us, right? Number 7 is that connecting with individuals is important. And I really can't stress this enough, having worked with in a lot of classroom environments where I had a very broad spectrum of proficiency in my classroom, meaning that I had students who were nearly bilingual in the same classroom with students who were just starting out. And it's very, very challenging to teach in an environment like that. And the way that you get to know who is struggling is by making connections with individual students, because we all have different personalities. We all have our own nature. And there's always going to be those students who are kind of in the background. They're flying under the radar. They're not raising their hand for help. They're not disrupting the classroom because they're not getting it. They're just, they're not going to call attention to it. So you need to be the one making sure that you're connecting with individual students so that you know that everybody's tracking. And if you're just working one-on-one with students, like as a tutor, this would be you really connecting with all of the individual students that you have, getting to know them, investing a little bit in the interaction beyond just the learning, and getting to know them on an individual basis. This will only help throughout the learning process. And finally, number 7, it's okay to feel like you're out of your depth. So just giving you permission right now. Sometimes we just need permission sometimes to not be so hard on ourselves, right? To know that it's okay. In the beginning, I probably am going to feel like I'm out of my depth, but you will get there. Just persevere, stick with it, give yourself some grace, and eventually you're going to be the teacher you want to be right now. It's just going to take some time, just like with everything that we've done in our lives. So there you go. 7 things that many teachers wish they would have known ahead of time before they started teaching English. Take these, make them your own, apply them to you, your individual situation, your individual students, and I guarantee you, you will be a much better teacher for it.